I don't think Auburn or Texas A&M know exactly what to think about Saturday.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into this special crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Aggies. I'm Zach Blackerby, host of Locked On Auburn. He is Andrew Stefaniak, the host of Locked On Aggies, and we'll talk about our official picks and predictions for Auburn versus Texas A&M. Mike Elko's comments, he had a little bit of a slip up. I think it's hilarious. We'll get your thoughts on that as well, Andrew. But, what's at stake in this game? It's kind of interesting because you've got two programs fighting, battling for two totally different things. Texas A&M, arguably 2 games away from the college football playoff. Auburn, man, we're trying to be able to head to Tuscaloosa for the Iron Bowl with a chance to go to a bowl game. But oddly enough, those things sound so different. The line, according to our friends at FanDuel, still just sitting at 2.5. Something's up with this game, Andrew.
The line, I expected it to be closer to, I expected a one-possession game, but I expected it closer to a touchdown than a field goal. I mean, you and I talked right after it kind of opened up, and we were like, what in the world? It shocked me. It shocked you. Not to say that I'm extremely confident in this game for Texas A&M, but I still expected the line to be a little bit, wider than it started. But this game, you're right. These two teams are playing for two different things in this football game. Texas A&M is looking for an SEC championship game appearance and potentially a college football playoff appearance. If they win out, they're in the SEC championship game playoff. Still some stuff to figure out there. Auburn, they're looking for that kind of win that makes you feel better about next year. There's more on the line in this football game, I think, for the Auburn side than the Texas A&M folks are really kind of picking up right now. Auburn wants this game, I think.
Yeah, I think so. This goes a long way because so much of the pressure of the current state of Auburn football is about the future and recruiting. I mean, with early signing days, somehow it's just weeks away at this point, which is kind of wild to think about. But when you look at what is at stake here for Auburn is you want to hold the recruiting class together because everything you're selling is proof of concept and a vision of the future. And if you beat a ranked team, Auburn would have more ranked wins than a lot of teams ranked in the top 5, it seems like, or the top 10, because Texas doesn't have one, Indiana didn't have one, so that'd be kind of interesting. But I think this would go a long way, especially when Auburn has been so close. Andrew, I think a lot of the people on the outside looking in of this situation, and you know this because you and I talked about it earlier in the week, but statistically, this Auburn team isn't bad. Top 30 on offense, top 30 on defense. It's almost a puzzle and a mystery, a very frustrating one from the Auburn side, of how they're sitting in this situation, begging, scratching and clawing to get to 6 wins to go to a bowl game. This team keeps finding different ways to lose down the stretch, whether it's a ton of picks against Cal or against Arkansas, or the inability to score more than a touchdown against Vanderbilt. It's been very frustrating, to say the least. And so a win against a really good Texas A&M team, and also just kind of the ego boost of saying, hey, we ruined somebody's season. We kept somebody out of the college football playoff. I do think that would go a long way.
It would go a long way on the Auburn side of things. And funny enough, Zach, I've had so many, Texas A&M fans in my comments. I have been in on Auburn, and I've said people have been comparing Auburn to Mississippi State. And in my comments,
in what way? In what way?
In how good they are.
Oh, got it.
I've had that happen, and I've pushed back on that every time. And I've said, listen, this Auburn team, I just did the opposite of what Elko did.
You just pulled an Elko.
I did. But this Auburn football team is not bad. Are they elite? I don't even know if I'd say they're good, but they're not bad.
Yeah, they're not inherently a bad football team. They've got the talent. They've got the pieces where you've got to worry about things defensively. If you're playing Auburn, you've got to worry about covering Cam Coleman. You've got to worry about Jarquez Hunter at running back. Keandre Lambert-Smith quietly quietly leading the SEC in touchdown catches. Like, there's some stuff to worry about when you're preparing for this Auburn Tigers team. And on defense, they've got several young studs, and we'll talk about them later, that you got a game plan for at this point. So yeah, I don't think you can look at Mississippi State and say the same thing. They've got dudes. Everybody in the SEC has dudes, but I think I think Auburn does present more problems than Mississippi State does. So I agree with your pushback on those comments.
And I've pushed back on that for weeks. And the reason that I think it's a relevant point is from the Texas A&M side, whether you haven't watched a lot of Auburn football, whatever it is, this team, if they take care of the football and maybe whoever is kicking this weekend puts them through, splits the uprights, Auburn can win this football game. I just think a lot of Texas A&M fans that I've seen on Twitter in my comments, they feel very confident in this game. Do I think Texas A&M ends up getting the win? I do, but I don't think this is going to be a game where you just walk in and this is never even competitive. Auburn is going to compete in this game. They're going to compete. Texas A&M has got to come in and play a solid game. A&M, I mean, they didn't almost lose to Mississippi State, but Mississippi State hung around. If you play the way you did against Mississippi State in Jordan-Hare Stadium, you're losing. It's simple as that. You've got to show up and play your brand of football to win this game.
Yeah, or if they play like they did against South Carolina, right? And we've seen them kind of be susceptible against the run, against teams that can run the football. I think that's a little overblown. South Carolina is the extreme example. And then a lot of these other teams that didn't run the football well, they don't typically run the football anyway, like LSU. So we'll see, like, was that a one-time thing? Or when teams are decent at running the football, does that actually translate into, you being able to score points against Texas A&M? We'll learn a lot about that, I think, this week when the Aggies do come to Jordan-Hare Stadium. But yeah, as far as what's at stake here, there's plenty for both teams to fight for. And it's just such a different feeling than the last time they came to Jordan-Hare Stadium. I mean, Brian Harsin had just been fired. Cadillac Williams was named interim head coach, and Aggies fans may not have realized what they were walking into. I mean, they were walking into this like revitalized, rejuvenated, excited fan base, and but both teams were 3-6, and it felt like they were battling for then the SEC West. And I don't think it's going to be different, but this is going to be a Jordan-Hare Stadium that's going to be fired up. It's senior day, and a lot of these seniors have really kind of battled through their tenure at Auburn, and I think the Auburn fan base respects that. You're going to see that. It's the last home game of the year for Auburn. It's a night game. This is going to be a rowdy crowd, and we've seen Jordan-Hare at night. It doesn't matter if it's against Texas A&M or even Alabama in the Iron Bowl last year, where Auburn should have won that game. They keep finding ways to lose. I can't say it enough, but this is going to be a tough out. Auburn's going to be a tough out. This isn't going to be a game where Texas A&M can just come in and do whatever they want. I don't think.
Looking at, I mean, one thing I've said about Auburn fans all week is respect to that fan base. They're going to be there. I don't care if they're 1-9. I don't care if they're 9-1. They're going to be there. You're walking into a hectic environment. I think a lot of people are looking at this going, well, it's a down Auburn team. We're going to run in here. We're going to take care of business, and then it's on to Texas. This Auburn football team, I've talked about it. They're 12th in college football against the run. They've got who I think is a top 5 running back in college football. Definitely best running back in the SEC, probably top 5 in college football. We could debate it, but an elite running back. They've got an elite set of weapons, a lot of young guys. Obviously, you've got the kicking issues, and you've got the Will Payton Thorne play well or throw it interceptions. Yeah, but it's a team, Texas A&M. And listen, Texas A&M's got their own issues, ladies and gentlemen. You are down Le'Veon Moss. You're down to Amari Daniels, who I think is a solid running back. After him, I don't know. And Texas A&M is going to want to run the football 40 times or 35 times.
To me, this is all about one thing, this matchup. It's all about one thing. And I want to share what it is and get your thoughts and see if you agree or not in just a moment on this crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Aggies. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Skylight Frames. Andrew, we were talking about this before we clicked record. Can you think of a better gift for relatives that live far away in your family for a Christmas gift. Whenever we started having kids, my wife's family, they live in Ohio. We sent them all of these skylight frames and are adding pictures to the kids. So they're always kind of got updated pictures in their living room. Sounds like you did a similar thing a few years ago.
I got one for my grandpa and my grandma. And what I love about it, when I'm going on trips, I was recently in Spain. They have the frame. What
a flex by you.
Okay, there you go. Whatever.
Wow.
But I send the pictures while I was in Spain. I was sending pictures from the app directly to their frame. They knew what I was up to. It's a perfect gift. I mean, whether you live far away or you live close, it's a fun gift for family members. I love it. I've been recommended to people long before they were our friends here in our network.
Yeah, so now as a special limited time offer for our listeners of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Aggies, you can get $20 off your purchase as Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/college. That is SKYLIGHTFRAME, skylightframe.com/college. Get $20 off your first purchase now at skylightframe.com/college. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Andrew, we talked about it already, and we're going to get our official picks later in the show, but Texas A&M -2.5 in this SEC showdown between Auburn and Texas A&M, the closest line, according to FanDuel, and all the SEC this week. But the crazy thing is, FanDuel, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. What? I love FanDuel. They're a great partner. I don't know how this is a good business model.
I agree with you.
I don't get it.
I love free money.
Yeah, go to FanDuel.com, and right now, $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits. That's over at FanDuel.com. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn or Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. The thing that matters most about this matchup, in my opinion, is what happens when Auburn is on offense and Texas A&M is on defense. I think it's going to be closer on the other side of the football when A&M has the ball and Auburn's defense is on the field. I think that's pretty even, and they're going to have their shares, but I do think Auburn's defense, from a matchup point of view, is going to be able to limit Texas A&M's offense at times. Unless Auburn's offense goes 3 and out, and over the course of 60 minutes, the Texas A&M offense wears down the Auburn defense. And that could totally happen. To me, it's all about, can Auburn consistently move the football and compete and potentially win the time of possession here? That to me is what's going to decide this football game.
Looking at that matchup, exactly what you're talking about, Auburn's offense versus the defense of Texas A&M, it's going to be a really interesting one. And I said it on my show today, looking at Auburn, they've moved the football. Moving the football hasn't been the issue. It's been scoring. It's been not break. And part of the issue is, well, they're not making field goals either, which, that's not we'll get there. But so Texas A&M, it's, do you keep going with that approach? You can bend, you can't break. Don't give them 7. Make them kick a couple field goals. They're not going to make all of them. I mean, I know they made a change of kicker, but that is the way you approach this, and creating turnovers from Peyton Thorne. When Auburn has really struggled, the games where they've really looked bad has been when Peyton Thorne has had whoopsies throwing the football.
And that's the narrative right now, even amongst Auburn fans. But it's not even really true. Like Auburn, when Peyton Thorne was turning the ball over as much as the storylines that are kind of following him say he was, Auburn was scoring more points. Like Auburn was moving the football more against Cal and the second half against Arkansas when he was in and all that. But you also have games like Vanderbilt where like turnovers weren't an issue and didn't really move the football. And so it's not just the turnovers. It's just any sort of moment of a game where you need a level of composure. This Auburn offense just hasn't shown it. And that to me is concerning. And I don't think it's all on Peyton Thorne. But here's what's wild to me, because you mentioned, like, it's not like they're not able to move the football. So Auburn is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14th in the league in points per game. Peyton is 6th in the conference in passing yards, and he sat out the New Mexico State game. And like, I think it's easy to say he would have gotten 300 there. That's what his backup did, right? That's what Hank Brown did. And so if you look at that, then he'd move up to fourth. Yeah, he would pass Taylor Green in that situation. So he'd be the fourth. He's on pace to be the fourth leading passer. We're looking at passing yards in the SEC. And then you look at rushing. Jarquez Hunter is the second leading rusher in the SEC behind Dylan Sampson of Tennessee. And then you look at Keandre Lambert-Smith, who's fourth in receiving yards and tied for the lead. No, he has the sole lead. No, he's tied for the lead in touchdown receptions. And it's like all of these guys are towards the top of the league, but they can't score points. And obviously that's a problem. That's super concerning.
It is, funny kind of talking about big picture for Auburn for a second. But if you would have told me all that, and asked me to predict a record.
Yeah, going into the season. Yeah.
It would have been a lot different.
Well, you and I had this conversation, I think it was while we were recording, because we did a few shows kind of previewing the season together. And it's like, if Peyton Thorne could be a top half quarterback in the SEC and the defense does what we think it can, and I think it's actually overachieved, if I'm being 100% honest, the defense has, Auburn has a chance to go 8-4. And it's crazy how this season has gone. And some of it I think is bad luck, and then some of it is just not executing when it matters most. And ultimately it doesn't matter if you're lucky or not, right? If you either win or you don't. And Auburn has been on the wrong side of that for sure.
So I've kind of got a question, and it's going to apply into the conversation we're having.
Sweet.
Looking at the season body of work for Auburn, I think the game where you could argue they had their best game plan, which I get they have a solid tight and they've got pretty darn good receivers. But Jarquez Hunter, I think, is your best weapon right now. It'll be Cam Coleman next year. Right now, It's Jarquez Hunter.
Sure.
What the one Power 4 game they won was a game against Kentucky in Lexington, and he ran for 270 yards. Yeah. Why? I don't understand why not feed him. It feels like they're doing too much in the passing game.
I'm with you, man.
I don't get it.
I'm with you. And Hugh Freeze, even after that game, he's like, yeah, I had to fight myself and keep calling run plays because I wanted to pass it. It's who I am. And it's like, you're still building your roster to be exactly what you want. Like, you're not there yet. It's not a finished product. You've got to call plays based off of what you have. And I think Auburn's offensive line is better at run blocking than pass blocking as well. So, like, I don't even think that really makes sense. Yeah. I also think Peyton Thorne's a really good runner, like a weirdly good runner. Yeah. And, they're not using him in that regard enough either. So, yeah, I'm there with you. I mean, I understand a coach believing in his offense and believing in the system that he's building and all of that. But at some point, you got to look and see what's worked and what isn't. Vanderbilt was a game where Auburn was favored. And everybody's like, oh, it's because they found their identity the week before when they went to Lexington and ran all over Kentucky. And Jarquez Hunter disappeared. And when Hugh Freeze was asked about it afterwards, he's like, well, he looked tired. Like, from what? Yeah. And so, it's been frustrating. It's been a very frustrating thing to navigate. I think if Auburn pounds the rock and uses Jarquez Hunter and he gets north of 20 touches, I like Auburn's chances. But Andrew, I don't think that's going to happen. If I had to guess, like, is Jarquez Hunter going to hit 17 touches? I would say no. Just because I don't think that's who this Auburn team wants to be. It's not who they are. And they're going to keep running the same offense that we've seen them run pretty much all year. That's my prediction.
And I said to my listeners today, if you're a Texas A&M fan, you want Peyton Thorne throwing the football a lot. It's just the reality, because I think you can lose if they feed Jarquez Hunter. You saw the blueprint. So if you're a Texas A&M fan, you want Hugh Freeze to be like, well, I like to throw it. We're going to throw it. You want that. Not going to sit here and talk about why I think it's a bad decision. You want that if you're a Texas A&M fan in this game.
Yeah, for sure. And the way Hugh Freeze's offense operates is it's all RPO stuff. And so when they call a play and there's an extra guy on the line of scrimmage or an extra guy in the box, it's like, okay, we're passing this. We're not going to run into that loaded box situation. And if you're Elko, I'm assuming Elko calls the defense. He may not. Correct me if I'm wrong. But whoever's calling the defense, like, if I'm preparing to stop this offense, it's like, yeah, I'm making sure that Peyton Thorne keeps the football and he doesn't hand it off to Jarquez or Damari or Jeremiah Cobb or whoever's back there. So, yeah, we're in agreement there. I want to get your thoughts on Elko's comments because you did the exact same thing. You did the exact same thing earlier in the show. Does it mean anything? And then, our picks and predictions. Those are coming up right here on this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn and Locked on Aggies. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to play daily fantasy sports. Now, you're kind of a fantasy savant. You and I are in a league together. My main league, I think, is one of your main leagues. It's very competitive, very competitive. Probably only one of us is going to make the postseason. But the beautiful thing about daily fantasy, Prize Picks, is if we don't make the playoffs, we can still play every single day thanks to Prize Picks.
And the good thing about Prize Picks is maybe I don't make the playoffs, and maybe my championship banner from that league last year has to hang alone this offseason. But it never ends on Prize Picks.
That's right.
You can do it every game. And not just football, you can do anything. There's no offseason with Prize Picks. I love it.
Yeah, you can now win up to 100x your money on Prize Picks with little 4 correct picks. All you're doing is you're going to pick more or less on at least 2 players in their stat line for a shot to win a ton of money, especially compared to what you're putting on the line. So download the app and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, LOCKEDONCollege. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege. You get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Final few moments here on this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn, Locked on Aggies. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but Mike Elko being asked if they're looking ahead to Texas, and then he accidentally says, no, we're solely focused on Auburn this week. I don't think it means anything. I truly think it was just a slip, but it is objectively funny. And if they lose, Andrew, if Auburn pulls this off, that is going to become a very big deal.
I said this on my show today, and it's no debate to it. Hilarious. Mm-hmm. You can't say it's not funny. If that was Kalen DeBoer that said that, Auburn fans would have had a field day with it. If it was Sarkisian, A&M fans would have had a field day with it.
Totally.
I guess the way I look at it is, if you're Texas fans, you can joke about it, no question. What I don't understand that I've seen, and if I'm undervaluing it, Zach, you tell me.
Okay.
But I've seen some Auburn fans kind of take it as like a bulletin board thing. And if you listen to what the full thing Elko said, he's talking about how, no, we're playing for a playoff. We know.
I think the whole bulletin board thing is whatever. And if you want to twist it to that, sure. But if Hugh Freeze needs that to motivate his team for this Saturday, you've got bigger problems, right?
Great point.
So it's objectively funny. And I do think it looks worse if they lose, but obviously they're focusing on Auburn this week. That'd be crazy if they weren't. Yeah. I hope they're watching more Texas tape than Auburn. That'd be great. But I just don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. All right, let's jump into our predictions. Like we said, FanDuel has this line at 2.5 as we record this on Wednesday. I think I would take Texas A&M minus 2.5 in this game. I think Texas A&M wins. I think this is going to be a game that is close in the third quarter, and I think something happens, whether it's Auburn making one of those plays where they have down the stretch and it puts themselves in a hole late, or, like we talked about with the Auburn defense being on the field a lot, and maybe Texas A&M's running game kind of finally breaks through and wears them down. I just think over the course of the full 60 minutes, Texas A&M is going to win the football game, but I do think it's close for the vast majority of the game. And I think it's one of those final scores where it looks worse than the game actually was.
I agree. I would be willing, if you told me the line was Texas A&M minus 6.5, I would probably take Texas A&M. I like the Aggies by about a touchdown. If you said 7.5, I would start to get a little bit ill about it.
Sure.
I like right at a touchdown. This is just a game. It's so funny to me, Zach. Missouri felt confident A&M was going to win. LSU felt extremely confident A&M was going to win. South Carolina, I picked A&M, but I felt really not good about it.
Got it.
I feel eerily similar here, but I think I'm a little bit more confident about playing Auburn than I am South Carolina, just because they were getting the Gamecocks are getting hot.
I mean, South Carolina's playing better right now.
They are. Agreed.
No question.
Environment wise, you're Sandstorm. Don't care. Put me on a whatever. That's fine. We lost there. Whatever. You can do that. But I'm much more worried about playing in Jordan-Hare Stadium on Saturday than I was playing against South Carolina on the road. I'm going to pick the Aggies, but I've kept using the analogy for Auburn. It's like you want a comebacker on the 18th. You're trying to hit a comeback drive on the 18th tee box, right? That's what Auburn's looking for. Texas A&M does not want to be that because their focus is on the college football playoff. Do not be the comeback drive. Texas A&M can't let it happen.
Yeah, I'm thinking 24-17 is kind of where I'm at with this game. I think A&M wins mid-20s to Auburn mid-teens, mid-upper teens. That's kind of where I'm living right now.
I'm looking at 27-20 Texas A&M. They win this game. That's how I see it going.
Yep.
Close game.
Yeah. We're not too far off. Let us know in the comments down below whether you're watching a Locked On Auburn or Locked On Aggies. What do you think the score of this football game is gonna be? For all the Auburn folks watching, Andrew, if they want more A&M coverage, where do they go?
Head on over to Locked On Aggies, wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube. Talked about this game all week, broke it down from all angles. So that's where you can find all that.
Yeah, for the Aggies folks watching, if you want more Auburn stuff, check out Locked On Auburn. However you're watching, you're consuming this show, Locked On Auburn is there as well. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. For your second listen, go check out our buddy Chris Gordy. He hosts Locked On SEC. This has been a special crossover edition of Locked On Aggies and Locked On Auburn, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.